Welcome to the FAA's informal airspace meeting on the proposed modification of Class Charlie airspace surrounding the Raleigh-Durham International Airport. We are glad you could join us for this virtual event. I'm Patrick Young, the FAA's moderator for today's meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to gather additional information to be considered in developing the proposal. These meetings provide interested parties with an opportunity to present views, recommendations, and comments on the proposal. Please note that the proposed modification would not restrict access to the airspace, nor change the flight paths or altitudes at which aircraft operate. Instead, these modifications are designed to better manage and communicate with aircraft operating within the Raleigh-Durham airspace. The lateral and vertical boundaries of the Class Charlie airspace, where pilots are required to interact with air traffic control and follow required operating procedures, would expand. As a result, the proposed modification would increase safety and reduce the risk of conflicts between aircraft for every pilot during all operations. Here is our agenda. The meeting will start with the FAA's detailed presentation of the proposed Raleigh-Durham airspace design, followed by presentations and comments from the attendees who registered in advance to speak. Afterward, our panel of experts will hold a question and answer session. Attendees on Zoom or YouTube can submit written questions while the meeting is streaming live. At the completion of the question and answer session, we will adjourn after a brief closing remark. For those of you who are joining us on Zoom, your microphones are muted and cameras are off. To submit a question during the question and answer session, please enter your written question into the question and answer tab on the Zoom platform. If you are attending this meeting via YouTube, you can submit your questions directly into the comments section. If you are having technical issues connecting to the virtual meeting, you can text our technical support team at 949-478-0253. This phone number is for text messaging only. The FAA is soliciting comments on the proposal, and we encourage you to submit any comments you may have. Please note, submitting a question during the question and answer session is not the same as providing a formal written comment. You can submit a formal comment by mailing it to the FAA at 1701 Columbia Avenue, College Park, Georgia 30337, or emailing it to the email address shown on screen. Please provide your comments by Friday, June 5th, 2026. You can also visit our website at www.faa.gov/air_traffic/community_engagement/RDU for more information about the project. Now you will hear an overview of the Raleigh-Durham airspace and key information regarding the proposed design from the air traffic controllers at Raleigh-Durham International Air Traffic Control Tower.
Hi, I'm Paul Shreve, Operations Supervisor at Raleigh-Durham Air Traffic Control Tower and TRACON. In the next few slides, I'll provide a basic overview of Raleigh-Durham International Airport and surrounding airspace operations. Raleigh-Durham International Airport, or RDU, is a public use airport located in North Carolina. It serves as a primary airport for the Triangle area and surrounding Piedmont region. The airspace at RDU includes both Class C and Class E airspace and serves commercial air carriers, general aviation aircraft, and military operations. However, this proposal only applies to the Class C airspace. RDU offers nonstop service to 83 destinations with daily commercial flights to select U.S. and international destinations. In 2025, RDU served over 15 million passengers, averaging 601 aircraft operations per day. Cargo operations are also an important component of RDU's activity, handling over 100,000 tons of cargo annually. Raleigh-Durham Airport is a significant driver for the region, contributing to the state economy and supporting thousands of jobs. RDU has 3 runways, including 2 parallel runways and a third crosswind, non-intersecting runway. When an airport is constructed, the runways are built to align with the most common wind directions in the area. This is because aircraft generally take off and land into the wind to maximize performance and ensure safety. Runway identification is based on the magnetic compass heading the aircraft is facing as it lands or takes off. For example, runway 2, 3, and 5 is oriented with a magnetic compass heading of approximately 230 degrees in one direction and 50 degrees in the opposite direction. If you drop the 0 at the end of the compass heading, you will get 2, 3, and 5. Parallel runways are further designated with L for left and R for right as you approach or depart the runway. Raleigh-Durham's two parallel runways are designated runway 23 left, 5 right, and runway 23 right, 5 left. These are the predominantly used runways at RDU Airport. The third runway, designated runway 1432, is a crosswind runway. This runway is used by the smaller prop aircraft. The selection of the runway in use is managed by the FAA air traffic controllers and is dependent on wind direction and other operational factors. FAA air traffic controllers are constantly sequencing arrivals and departures to ensure safe and efficient operations. RDU operates within a busy and complex airspace, requiring coordination between air traffic controllers and the users of the national airspace system. Within 25 nautical miles of Raleigh-Durham International Airport, there is a mix of general aviation airports, hospitals with heliports, and skydiving operations. While RDU airspace includes numerous satellite and general aviation airports, the three most frequently used are Raleigh Executive Jetport, Triangle North Executive, and Johnston Regional. The airspace surrounding RDU includes frequent flight operations by non-participating VFR aircraft. A non-participating VFR aircraft is one operating without ATC services, relying on visual navigation, and only required to contact ATC when operating in controlled airspace such as Class C. Traffic from nearby airports often operates in the same altitude bands used by arriving and departing aircraft in close proximity to RDU. In addition, military operations are conducted in the region, including within nearby special use airspace, which may impact routing and air traffic control coordination. The FAA directs traffic through three-dimensional airspace, which is divided into airspace classes. The four primary categories of airspace are controlled, uncontrolled, special use, and other. Controlled airspace includes classes A, B, C, D, and E. For our purposes today, we'll focus on Class Charlie. In controlled airspace, air traffic control services are provided to instrument flight rules or IFR flights and to visual flight rules or VFR flights in accordance with the airspace classification. In Class Charlie airspace, aircraft must be equipped with a two-way radio and must establish communications with ATC prior to entering this airspace. A transponder with altitude reporting capability and ADS-B out is required to operate in and transition above the Class Charlie. Air traffic services and separation are provided to IFR and VFR aircraft.
Hello, my name is Robert Ross, and I'm an air traffic control specialist at the Raleigh-Durham Airport Traffic Control Tower. The following slides will present graphics depicting the current Raleigh-Durham, or RDU, Class C airspace, and the FAA proposed change. The FAA has conducted an extensive study, and the following graphics reflect the detailed work done to design the proposed airspace changes. This graphic shows the current Raleigh-Durham Class C airspace depicted by a solid magenta line that overlies one major airport, Raleigh-Durham International. The current Class C airspace for RDU has a ceiling of 4,400 feet above mean sea level, or MSL, and has a 5 nautical mile radius core surface area and a 10 nautical mile radius outer shelf. The floor of the core surface area begins at ground level, shown as SFC, or surface, and the outer shelf has an airspace floor of 1,700 feet MSL. The FAA is proposing airspace changes for several reasons. To better align the airspace with how aircraft fly today, ensure that more aircraft within busy arrival departure corridors are in communication with air traffic control, improve predictability for both pilots and controllers, reduce the potential for mid-air conflict during critical phases of flight, support safe and efficient parallel runway operations at RDU, support for aircraft utilizing next-generation satellite-based optimized approach procedures. Overall, these updates aim to improve safety and efficiency at Raleigh-Durham International Airport and its surrounding airspace. On January 23, 2025, as part of the Class Charlie modification process, The FAA met with the Raleigh-Durham Class C Ad Hoc Committee to explain and present the proposed airspace. The Ad Hoc Committee was comprised of local airspace users to provide input and recommendations to the FAA on the proposed change. After receiving the Ad Hoc Committee's recommendations and reviewing the committee's final report, the FAA modified the original Class Charlie proposal and resulted in the Class C dimensions shown on the right. This sectional chart shows the proposed revisions to the Raleigh-Durham Class C airspace. The updated proposal includes a few key changes. The top of the airspace would increase from 4,400 feet to 6,000 feet MSL. The core surface area would expand slightly. The outer shelves would extend further out to the northeast and southwest. These new boundaries and the associated vertical limits were designed in accordance with FAA Order JO 7400.2. This slide compares the current airspace with the proposed changes, which expands coverage in certain areas to better match current flight paths. Again, this proposal is about improving safety and efficiency, not restricting access. We divided the proposed Class C changes into 7 areas, designated with the letters A through G. Each area will be individually reviewed in the upcoming slides. Let's start with Area A, the inner core surrounding the airport. This area would expand from 5 nautical miles to 6.5 nautical miles from the RDU 005 bearing in a clockwise direction to the RDU 266 bearing. The airspace ceiling would be raised from 4,400 feet MSL to 6,000 feet MSL. So why the change? Because Area A is where aircraft are either landing or just taking off, 2 of the most critical phases of flight, the proposed change would deconflict arriving aircraft landing at RDU from non-participating aircraft operating just outside of the current Class C core surface area near the final approach corridors by requiring two-way radio communication. Air traffic control can then provide traffic advisories and sequencing instructions, improving predictability and supporting stabilized approaches during the final phase of flight. Additionally, by requiring two-way communication, controllers can ensure predictable vertical separation and provide traffic advisories during the critical initial climb phase jet aircraft make to 6,000 feet after departure. The next area, Area B, extends the airspace to the northeast. Under this proposal, the current outer shelf would extend to 12.2 nautical miles from a 005 clockwise to 090 bearing parallel to the main runways. The airspace ceiling would be raised from 4,400 feet MSL to 6,000 feet MSL. This change helps separate arriving aircraft landing at RDU during parallel runway operations from other non-participating aircraft that are not in communication with air traffic control, flying beneath Class C and nearby the final approach paths. This change would also deconflict departing or arriving aircraft with non-participating aircraft transitioning along the edge of the existing Class C. Ensuring aircraft are deconflicted from non-participating VFR aircraft enhances safety and was therefore paramount in this design change. Area C further expands the airspace in the same northeast direction. It would extend the airspace to 15.3 nautical miles. The airspace would have a floor of 2,600 feet MSL, and the ceiling would also be raised to 6,000 feet MSL. Importantly, this extended area would not restrict access to the airspace, but would require aircraft to be in communication with air traffic control. This allows controllers to maintain awareness of all aircraft operating near busy arrival and departure corridors. Just like Area B, this change would help separate aircraft arriving at RDU during parallel runway operations from other non-participating aircraft flying beneath Class C and nearby the final approach paths. It would also deconflict departing or arriving aircraft with non-participating aircraft transitioning along the edge of the existing Class C. With the increase in traffic levels, the proposed changes would increase safety and efficiency within arrival and departure corridors at RDU. Area D mirrors Area B, but to the southwest. It would extend the current outer shelf of Class C airspace to 12.2 nautical miles from a 185 to 266 bearing, parallel to the main runways. The airspace ceiling would be raised from 4,400 feet MSL to 6,000 feet MSL. Again, the goal is to reduce conflicts and improve safety between arriving and departing aircraft from non-participating aircraft flying beneath or along the edge of the current Class C airspace. Area E mirrors Area C, but to the southwest. It would extend the airspace to 15.3 nautical miles. The airspace would also have a floor of 2,600 feet MSL, and the ceiling would also be raised to 6,000 feet MSL. Importantly, just like Area C, this extended area would not restrict access to the airspace, but would require aircraft to be in communication with air traffic control, helping to maintain awareness and reduce risk. Again, the goal is to reduce conflicts and improve safety between arriving or departing aircraft from non-participating aircraft flying beneath or along the edge of the current Class C airspace. Area F extends the airspace to the northwest and raises the altitudes from 4,400 feet MSL to 6,000 feet MSL. This extension helps prevent conflict between arriving aircraft landing at RDU and non-participating aircraft operating beneath or above the current Class C airspace near the final approach paths. It would also help deconflict departing or arriving aircraft with non-participating aircraft transitioning along the edge or above the existing Class C. This extension, along with Area G, is paramount for the next generation satellite-based approaches that begin in these areas at 6,000 feet MSL. Area G would be the extended portion of the current outer shelf of Class C airspace, providing additional coverage southeast of RDU. Just like all other areas, the ceiling would be raised from 4,400 feet MSL to 6,000 feet MSL. The proposed changes would deconflict arriving aircraft landing at RDU from non-participating aircraft operating beneath or above the current Class C airspace in close proximity to the final approach paths. It would also deconflict departing or arriving aircraft with non-participating aircraft transitioning along the edge or above the existing Class C. Altogether, these changes help ensure that aircraft operating to or from RDU are properly managed and separated from non-participating aircraft in the area. The next two slides will demonstrate how aircraft operate into and out of RDU during both southwest and northeast runway configurations. The first image here shows how aircraft operate when using the southwest runway configuration. In this configuration, runway 23 right and runway 23 left are the primary runways used for both arriving and departing aircraft, while smaller aircraft may still land on runway 32. With the proposed changes, air traffic control will be better able to separate aircraft arriving and departing on parallel runways and provide a more efficient operation. Again, these changes do not alter where aircraft fly. They simply improve communication and coordination. This slide shows the northeast runway configuration. In this configuration, runway 5 right and runway 5 left are the primary runways used for arriving and departing aircraft. Once again, smaller aircraft may still land on runway 3-2. And just like in the previous example, the updated airspace allows for safer and more efficient handling of aircraft during busy periods. The focus remains on improving separation and reducing risk during critical phases of flight. Let's look at a real-world example. In this case, aircraft 1, shown in yellow, was cleared for the approach to runway 5 right at RDU International Airport. A non-participating aircraft, aircraft 2, shown in blue, flew beneath the current Class C airspace at an unverified altitude of 1,500 feet MSL. Aircraft 2 flew directly into the path of aircraft 1 without required communication with air traffic control. This forced aircraft 1 to slow their descent in response to a TCAS alert to avoid any conflict. Situations like this are exactly what these proposed changes are designed to prevent. In this second example, aircraft 1, shown in green, and aircraft 2, shown in blue, both departed runway 5 left at RDU in succession. A non-participating aircraft, aircraft 3, shown in yellow, flew above the current Class C airspace at an unverified altitude of 5,500 feet MSL. Aircraft 3, again, not in required communication with ATC, flew directly into the path of aircraft 1 and aircraft 2, which were both climbing to 6,000 feet MSL, and then made an unpredictable turn near RDU. Air traffic control was required to take immediate action and stop the climb of aircraft 1 and aircraft 2 during a critical phase of flight immediately after takeoff to ensure separation. Here, aircraft 1, 2, and 3 were all being sequenced to land on runways 23 right and 23 left. A non-participating aircraft, aircraft 4, shown in yellow, flew in an unpredictable manner along the edge of the current Class C airspace. The non-participating aircraft flew into the intended arrival path of aircraft 1, requiring ATC to instruct aircraft 1 to fly further away from the airport to ensure separation from aircraft 2 and 4. The non-participating aircraft then forced ATC to instruct aircraft 2 to make a rapid descent to get beneath their indicated altitude. The last aircraft, aircraft 3, was required to be kept for a longer time at a higher altitude to avoid aircraft 4 crossing its path. In this example, controllers had to make several quick adjustments, sending aircraft away from the airport, changing altitudes, and delaying approaches. This introduced inefficiency and subsequently increased workload during a critical phase of flight and therefore increased risks. Proposed changes aim to reduce these kinds of unpredictable interactions by ensuring more aircraft are in communication with air traffic control.
In the upcoming slides, I'll discuss the FAA's rulemaking and environmental review process. Any change to Class Charlie airspace must go through the rulemaking process. Rulemaking is the process federal agencies use to make new regulations. Any proposed rule goes through numerous reviews, and the public has the opportunity to review and comment on the proposed rule. The FAA is required to review and consider every comment. Once the agency has read and considered all comments, it decides whether to go ahead with the final rule. The agency may adopt a final rule that is identical or similar to the initial proposal, or it might make changes based on the comments. As shown on the slides, this informal airspace meeting is an integral part of the process that comes before the notice of proposed rulemaking. Before any changes can be made, the proposed rule must also go through an environmental review, which is required by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA requires that the agency evaluate environmental and related social and economic effects on the proposed action. The review includes a preliminary technical review, a preliminary environmental review, an internal review, and a choice of appropriate NEPA review, which could include extraordinary circumstances, and significant impacts. The graphic on this slide depicts the FAA's general NEPA process for all projects. It is not specific to this project, but it will be applied to this project. We are about to begin the live portion of the meeting and the question and answer session with the expert panel. Here is a summary of the next steps in the process. Comments will be accepted until June 5th, 2026. The FAA will consolidate and review comments. The FAA will consider comments and incorporate pertinent modifications. The FAA will finalize the environmental review. Once the notice of proposed rulemaking has been published in the Federal Register, there will be a separate 60-day comment period. We encourage you to submit your written comments. You may do so by addressing them to the FAA via mail or via email to the addresses shown on the screen. Please submit your comments no later than June 5th, 2026. You can also visit our website at www.faa.gov/air_traffic/community_engagement/RDU for more information about the project. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the FAA's website for future viewing. Hello again. I'm Patrick Young, and I will be the moderator for the live portion of this workshop. I'd like to cover 3 procedural items before we begin the question and answer session. First, if you are having technical issues connecting to the workshop, you can text our tech support number anytime during the workshop at 949-478-0253. Second, we're streaming this workshop on the FAA's YouTube live feed and recording it for viewing on our website after the workshop concludes. Finally, this meeting pertains to the proposed modification of the Raleigh-Durham Class C airspace, and we will be fielding questions related to the proposed change. We're requesting that questions outside of the scope of the proposal be limited to ensure that there's ample time to address questions related to the proposed modification. We will now begin the segment where participants can provide comments or make presentation. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. We will announce each attendee's name and unmute their microphone in the Zoom webinar. Just a reminder that spoken statements are not considered formal comments on the proposal. These must be submitted in writing as per the meeting notice. If you prefer to submit a formal comment instead of speaking, please inform the panel so that we can adjust the schedule accordingly. I will add that all presentations are from the speaker's personal perspective and do not reflect the opinions of the FAA. Today we have 2 presentations, and our first presenter is Natalie Liu. Natalie, you have 3 minutes.
I think I just unmuted. So, actually, sorry, I don't have a presentation. I was doing some research for another project today. So first of all, I'll just make a comment, but this was a great presentation. So thank you very much. I've been following the RDU and how it's developed since the 30s. So I know a lot about the history. Interesting that you made a comment about the runways typically go in with the direction of the wind. One of the things RDU did back in the 70s, they actually tried to do a crosswind runway. And in that, they ended up taking land that was way outside the FAA approved boundary. That was actually critical to Umstead State Park. So basically my question and what I kind of want to hear on is like basically how we're protecting Umstead State Park. So Umstead State Park was first, and I understand that this is airspace, but what I've seen RDU do over historically is they take FAA guidances and directives, which are understandably airport centric, but they take that airport centricity and they basically allow the airport to run wild with public resources next to the airport. So sorry, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but so again, so I understand how the airspace works, but my concern is that like right now, RDU took that land that's critical to Umstead State Park. It's outside of the 65 LDN line. And now instead of it going to the park, they're trying to put a rock quarry on it. So how can you guys, and what kind of regulations can you put into your current law that's going to protect the neighboring lands while protecting the plains, of course. You know, and I say this again because, like for the airport layout plan, RDU just recently with the Vision 2040 master plan, they took that airport layout plan and they claimed it was a rezoning document. So even though this land that was critical to the park was zoned residential, RDU has claimed that they basically can ignore all of the zoning that's been established, and that's why they're putting a rock quarry there. And they're using the FAA guidances as a reason for doing this. So again, knowing what RDU's done in the past, like with this new airspace, like what can you put in there to say, RDU, you've got to limit this to where the planes are taken off. This doesn't allow you to go encroach into the park and do further damage, because they're not only taking Umstead State Park land, they're taking Lake Crabtree, and they're using FAA guidances like for money making as a way to say they can ignore all of the zoning. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Natalie. Our second presenter today is Cody Hart. Cody, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Cody Hart. I work as a pilot for a management company based at RDU. I'm here this evening to speak in support of the proposed amendment of the Class C airspace here at the RDU airport. As the air traffic grows, I believe the airspace needs to grow with it. According to the RDU airport website, it now serves 19 different airlines. Many of these airlines serve international routes on a large, heavy aircraft type. According to the airport statistics, the airlines carried more than 15 million people in 2024 and 2025. The airport is also home to 2 FBOs for corporate and general aviation operations. Let's not forget, we also have cargo operations and military operations that add to the traffic at RDU. With the new runway project, I feel now is the perfect time to grow the airspace. Expanding the airspace with the directional Class C type would increase safety and make controller pilot workload much more efficient. Having more of the actual instrument approaches inside the airspace just works better for everyone, controllers, pilots, and the passengers, especially during times of high demand or when one of the parallel runways is unavailable or closed. I would like to use the Nashville airport as an example of a recent successful Class C airspace expansion. Our air traffic controllers here at RDU are some of the best in the country. I hope that we can help them further increase safety by approving the airspace expansion. The airspace expansion, in my opinion, would close the gap between the airport's arrivals and the approaches. The current Class C airspace configuration only contains intermediate fixes and final approach fixes. Increasing the airspace size with the directional configuration would include some or all of the initial approach fixes in RDU. Many of the arrival routes transition or link up onto the approach. I believe the airspace expansion is a great thing for everyone involved with the RDU airport. I appreciate your time and allowing me to speak in support of the Class C airspace amendment.
Thank you, Cody. And at this time, that concludes our presentations for this evening. Next, we will move on to the live question and answer session to address the questions that we are receiving from Zoom and FAA's social media platforms. At this time, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Paul Shreve is a Raleigh-Durham air traffic control supervisor. Robert Ross, an air traffic control specialist at the Raleigh-Durham Airport, and Evan White, an air traffic control specialist at the Raleigh Airport. Welcome, panelists, and thank you for representing your facility. Before we answer questions from this meeting, I'd like to ask the panelists a few questions received from our registrants during the Zoom registration process. This first question I've got, Rob, if you'd like to give a stab at it, but why do we need this airspace change?
Yeah, sure, Patrick, thanks. And thanks for everybody for joining us this evening as well, taking the time out of your lives for this. The proposed airspace change is needed because aircraft currently are arriving and departing RDU routinely operating outside the current Class Charlie boundaries. And this occurs while they're being sequenced for arrival into Raleigh, while they're departing Raleigh, climbing off of Raleigh, all during very critical phases of flight. So In those areas, aircraft are currently not required to establish two-way communication with air traffic control. And that essentially, reduces predictability for us as controllers, limits our ability to provide traffic advisories or manage developing situations. This becomes very crucial for us during parallel runway operations, parallel runway approaches, where the aircraft separation requirements are very specific, and they leave us controllers with very little to no time to manage or react to these developing situations that occur with the non-participating VFR aircraft. So that essentially leads to a cascading or a domino effect of trying to keep all of the aircraft safely separated during these close parallel runway operations. So what we look forward here with the proposed modification is to align the Class Charlie airspace boundaries where those aircraft are already operating. This will improve the situational awareness for both pilots, controllers. It'll increase the predictability for both of us as well. And then also reduce the potential for mid-air conflicts. Again, like I said, particularly during the high density arrival and departure operations. So thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Rob. And this proposal is really, about safety is what we're looking for, is to just increase the availability of safe operations into and out of Raleigh. Paul, I've got a question here I believe you'd be good for. Why can't the FAA leave operations the way they are now?
Oh, yeah. Great question. And thanks for everyone for being on today. While the current operations, they meet existing requirements, they involve recurrent interactions between arriving and departing aircraft and the non-participating aircraft operating nearby they're not in two-way communication with ATC. So as the traffic volume and the complexity at RDU have increased, these interactions, they've become more frequent in areas where aircraft are operating during critical phases of flight. And in these areas, the lack of the required two-way communication, it reduces the predictability and it limits the ability to proactively manage the traffic before the conflicts develop. The proposed airspace modification, it aligns the Class C boundaries with where aircraft are already operating. And it ensures that the aircraft in those areas are communicating with ATC. So it will improve predictability, it enhances situational awareness, and it reduces the need for last minute corrective actions, supporting a safer and more efficient operations for all users.
Thanks, Paul. And while I've got you, what guarantees here are there that GA pilots won't face excessive delays when accessing the expanded Class C?
Well, the FAA order, the 7110.65, it requires the GA pilots, they must establish that two-way radio communication before entering the Class Charlie. Controllers may delay the entry only when the traffic or the workload demands it. But if they're going to hold them, the pilots, they must be informed of the expected delays. The delays, they're minimized through efficient traffic management, communication, ensuring the GA pilots get safe and timely access without excessive wait times.
Thanks, Paul. We'll say this, I'm certain, a bunch of times throughout the evening, but really this expanded Charlie airspace is about safety and communication. At the end of the day, we want what's best for everybody. Evan, is this Class Charlie modification because there's way too many VFR aircraft in the area?
No, this is not because there are too many VFR aircraft. We've already said tonight, the issue is that these aircraft are operating near the busy arrival and departure corridors around Raleigh, outside of the Class Charlie as it currently sits, and they're not talking to air traffic control. And so the proposed change will ensure that aircraft operating near those corridors are talking to the same controller, so everybody has the same picture. So it's all about communication and predictability, so that we can safely and efficiently get the airplanes in and out and around the Raleigh area.
Thanks, Evan. I got a question here on why is the FAA having this informal airspace meeting? I'll go ahead and answer that. The FAA is committed to engaging with communities that may be affected by proposed changes to airspace. Class C airspace changes include a rulemaking process that is required by law for the FAA to host this informal airspace meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to gather additional information to be considered in developing the proposal. So developing this airspace. This meeting provides interested parties an opportunity to present views, recommendations, and comments on the proposal. All comments received during this meeting will be considered prior to any revisions of airspace and issuance of a notice of proposed rulemaking. And again, you'll have until June 5th to make any comments necessary towards the proposal. It could be positive or negative. And we will have to consider them, the FAA will. Rob, I got a question here that you'll be able to answer, hopefully. Will I still be able to fly the RNAV 21 approach into TTA without communicating with air traffic?
Yeah, Patrick, that's an important question that needs to be answered this evening. And I believe we have a slide that we can bring up to demonstrate this. So the ad hoc committee process during that, this was one of their concerns as far as Raleigh Executive Airport and the RNAV 21 approach at for runway 21 down there. So we took a look at everything, and air traffic controllers here at Raleigh, we decided we could submit a modification for the RNAV 21 approach there, which would slightly shift the intermediate fix and the initial approach fixes towards the southwest to kind of keep them outside of the proposed Class Charlie expansion. And right now we're expecting this charting to happen sometime in 2027, early 2027, I believe, for the new procedure at Raleigh Exec. We're looking at this as a whole too. So this shift is actually going to benefit us at RDU as well, with aircraft landing on runway 5 left and 5 right, the northeast operation. So shifting this RNAV track is twofold. It'll allow some better separation between the arrivals on runway 5 left and right at RDU, and still allow a more seamless operation at Raleigh Executive if aircraft are requesting to conduct this approach. One thing I would like to add onto this as well is you can see that shift there where Yuxie is the intermediate fix there. So there's a small portion there, the lateral portion of the new procedure. Pilots will be able to still fly it, but there will be a small portion that they would have to descend beneath the proposed Class Charlie airspace if they're not already talking to air traffic control. If they want to just fly this as a non-participating aircraft out there, there is a small portion where they would have to descend beneath the proposed airspace. But Raleigh, all the controllers here, we're happy to provide a practice approach if needed for any aircraft that wants to conduct this approach. And we intend to keep the current lettered airman that is published, allowing us to conduct these approaches for them.
Thanks, Rob. So like you said, if you want to fly it and not talk to them, you can. But if you want to fly and talk to them, they're more than willing to help you out. Rob, while I've got you, how long ago did these traffic conflict examples occur?
Sure, and that's another important question too. So the type of conflicts, they've existed for many years, and sometimes occur multiple times a day throughout different shifts. The specific examples that were captured for the presentation here had occurred within, I believe, the last 6 months or so. But the data analysis, as far as the safety aspect and what we're presenting this evening, is a culmination of years of data that we've pulled.
Thanks, Rob. Like you said, the data that we have goes back years, and it continues to happen today. So it's not just a one-time off example either. there's lots of traffic that happens out there from time to time. I have a question here. Will the noise contours be affected, particularly over the NEPA protected William B. Umstead State Park to the east of the airport? And I'll go ahead and answer that. Once the final design of the airspace is completed, a noise study will be conducted to determine if there's an increase, a decrease, or no change to the noise footprint. A noise study will be compared to the baseline study of the current noise Raleigh footprint. So after the final design, actually is inputted, there's a whole team that will study the effects of noise and other effects to the area based off of what they predict the changes will be. Rob, I know you're a busy person, but the Class E surface area extensions should be extended as well to help discourage scud runners under what will become a 1,700 foot and 2,600 foot floor. Expanding the Class C without including expanding Class E surface area defeats the purpose of the Class C expansion. Can you take a crack at that?
Sure. So if I understand this correctly, as far as the question's asking, the Class E provides kind of the buffer, the controlled airspace for IFR flights, transitioning between Class G airspace and more restrictive airspace, such as Class C here. So as the process continues along, we'll continue to deliberate and evaluate any further modifications that will be needed along with the proposed Class Charlie modifications. And if that includes Class E airspace, then we will take a look at that.
Yeah, so again, this is the design that we're proposing after the ad hoc committee meetings and stuff. And so if you have, concerns or issues, you can, again, make your comments until June 5th. And then again, there'll be a 60-day comment period after the NPRM phase. So we'll take all comments and we do look at all the different types of airspace around to make sure that everything is updated appropriately. Paul, I got a question here that I feel like you'll be good at. How will the FAA measure whether the change is successful? Will there be a review period after the implementation? And can the changes be reversed or adjusted if problems arise?
Yeah, great question. Raleigh Tower will continue to operate a robust quality control program, collecting and validating all the safety data. If there's a rise in the safety events detected, appropriate measures will be sought in order to mitigate any risk. So in addition, the airspace designations are reviewed on a continuing basis and they'll be adjusted as needed.
Thanks, Paul. And like you said, the FAA constantly reviews all airspace types just to make sure that they're appropriate as needed. And so after this one becomes effective, it will get reviewed in the appropriate amount of time, and that way, we can make sure that it's being effective like it should be. Evan, you haven't been up for a little bit, so how will noise abatement procedures change to accommodate the proposed changes, which will now expand to populated areas?
So the great thing about this change is it's not changing the routes. So we aren't anticipating any changes to our current noise abatement procedures due to this expansion. This is more for internal talking to people, keeping people actually on the routes that we already have now, and keeping everyone safe while they're there.
Thanks, Evan. And it sounds like, in reality, if this proposal goes through, the planes will actually be more on the routes than having to being taken off due to non-participating aircraft being in the way.
Yep.
Thank you. Rob, does the FAA and/or Raleigh-Durham air traffic staff foresee any issues with airspace used by rotary wing medevac aircraft into the nearby hospitals at REX, Duke, and UNC Chapel Hill?
No, we don't really foresee any issues with the helicopters, the rotary wing medevac aircraft operating into those local hospitals. The proposed change itself merely expands the Class Charlie requirements, helping increase safety and efficiency for all aircraft. So again, we talked about the two-way radio communication, so we'll have a better idea, and those aircraft will be more predictable for us as far as what their intentions are. So no, rotary aircraft will still operate within the Class Charlie airspace under the existing requirements and all the existing procedures that we have to follow for such as if they're requesting medevac priority handling, things like that in that nature.
Thanks, Rob. And like you said, medevac aircraft, typically get priority as it is anyway. So I'm sure that they'll continue their excellent service that they provide you already. I got a question here. What NEPA aspects do you expect to evaluate? And I'll go ahead and just answer that. The FAA will look at all relevant impact categories required by the FAA Order 1050.1G. This includes noise. For noise, NEPA requires that we evaluate whether the airspace changes impacts are to sensitive areas. Those being areas such as historical or cultural sites, national parks, wildlife refuges, and quiet space locations such as places of worship. So the FAA will follow the NEPA process as required once the final proposal comes out. Evan, how does the airspace change affect requirements for aircraft to be equipped with transponders and ADS-B?
So ADS-B equipment requirements are not changing because of this expansion, but the proposed expansion will increase the lateral and vertical areas where you are required to have ADS-B and whatever other equipment you may need. So inside the expanded portion and above it, you would have to meet those requirements, but the requirements themselves have not changed.
Thanks, Evan. And like you said, we're not changing any of the requirements or restrictions for operating in and around Class Charlie airspace. We're actually just trying to expand the Class Charlie airspace around Raleigh. So the previous rules, our current rules, will still apply just the way they apply now. It'll just be in a larger area of airspace. Rob, do the air traffic controllers support this proposal?
Patrick, I think either myself, Evan, or Paul could answer this question, but without a doubt, the controllers here at Raleigh, we've already been actively involved throughout the evaluation process and have provided, input based on all of our operational experience in the local area. So 100% yes, the controllers here, we support this proposal. We, routinely work the traffic in this environment and have identified these recurring scenarios where aircraft are operating near the arrival and departure corridors without having to be within two-way radio communication with ATC. So based on that experience, controllers recognize that aligning the Class Charlie airspace within these areas would improve communication and also increase that predictability and reduce the need for last-minute interventions. So overall, the proposal reflects that operational input, and it's intended to support a safer and more efficient service for all aircraft operating in the area.
Thanks, Rob. And since he threw your name out there, Evan, I assume that you 100% agree with everything that he said.
I do. Having a more predictable traffic pattern is going to be great. We realigned some of the arrival procedures and things back in 2020, And this airspace change kind of like completes the picture for us, and we'll make Raleigh an even safer place than it already is.
Thanks, guys. Paul, what is the penalty for violating Class C airspace, and will the FAA allow for one-time deviations?
This proposal, it's not going to change how airspace violations are handled. Air traffic will still issue those brasher warnings if it appears a violation has occurred. But how potential violations are handled, it's addressed by the Flight Standards District Office or FSDO.
Thanks, Paul. And like we said earlier, we're not changing any of the regulations for operating in and around Class Charlie airspace. So it's just changing the actual area of the Class Charlie. So the same rules apply, the same penalties, will apply as well. So there'll be plenty of communication about any airspace changes before they happen. So you'll be able to, make sure that you are safely navigating in and around the area. I got a question here. Besides noise, are there any other environmental considerations? And I'll go ahead and just answer that. In addition to noise, the FAA's environmental review considers impacts to many different environmental resource categories. More specifically, NEPA requires us to consider impacts to natural, ecological, and cultural or scenic resources of national, state, or local significance. So all those different things will be looked into again once the final design has been put out for review. Paul, while I've got you, uh, what is the floor of the Class Charlie in the southwest area over the Cox and Dex fields? Currently, it's at 17,000. Does it remain?
Yes, I believe the floor is 1,700, and yeah, the floor of the Class Charlie airspace will be 1,700 feet MSL over those airfields.
Thank you, Paul. And since I still got you here, what are you putting these in these? Sorry, are you putting in these procedures so that airlines can operate more flights?
No, the proposal, it's not intended to increase the number of flights into RDU. The purpose of the airspace modification is to better align the Class C boundaries with where aircraft are already operating during arrival and departures. This is going to allow ATC to manage traffic more effectively by ensuring aircraft in those areas are, in fact, in two-way communication with air traffic. And at RDU, the FAA does not regulate airline schedules or the number of flights. Our role is to simply ensure the airspace system operates safely and efficiently for all users. This proposal focuses on improving predictability and situational awareness in the terminal area. It doesn't introduce any new routes or increase capacity.
Thanks, Paul. And like you said, here at Raleigh, the FAA doesn't do the airline schedules or how many flights in and out. So really, this expanding of the Charlie is just to better encompass the arrivals and departures in and out of Raleigh, and it just will make a more predictable path for the planes coming in and leaving, and then allowing the controllers to talk to planes that want to navigate around the area. Um, what education will be provided to local pilots on how to navigate the new Class Charlie airspace, and how will the FAA ensure safety during this transition to the expanded airspace boundaries? Paul, could you give that a shot?
Yeah, per the order 7400.2, it governs the airspace changes. So the FAA, they're required to conduct user education meetings after the issuance of a final rule designating Class Charlie airspace. These meetings are intended to publicize the implementation of Class C service and help ensure a safe transition to the expanded airspace boundaries. And additionally, during any subsequent implementation phase, the FAA is going to take further steps to advertise the change. And they'll provide pilots with the tools and the information necessary to safely navigate within the national airspace system.
Thanks, Paul. And Rob, I know you're a pilot as well. Do you have anything that you might be able to add kind of to the education piece for local pilots?
I'll say we've got a pretty good relationship, I feel like, with a lot of the local users in the airspace here, along with the FAA's safety team as well. And we try to conduct as many pilot outreach briefings as possible, including tours and whatnot, even phone calls for that matter, answering pilot questions. So, we want to continue that two-way communication as we move forward and, just make sure that the National Airspace System operates in the most safe manner possible. And that is a two-way street between us and the users. So communication is key there.
Thanks, Rob. I got a question here. When do you expect the proposed Class C airspace to be in effect, and what will the timeline look like from this meeting to the final decision? And I'll go ahead and answer that as well. There's no specific time frame currently established. Any rulemaking process that follows and the subsequent implementation phases could take approximately 6 months to 2 years to complete. So we're halfway through the process kind of at the moment. We've already had the ad hoc committee presentation, and then they've come back with their recommendations. This is the next step. Again, there'll be a 30-day comment period after that. Then the FAA will look at all the comments made. We'll have to, answer those comments and questions, and then go from there. So it really just depends on lots of factors that but we'll do our best to get the project done in a timely and efficient manner. We got another pilot education question, so I'll go ahead and give that to you, Rob. But would pilot education make a difference so that we do not have to expand the Raleigh-Durham Class C airspace?
Well, so, like I said, pilot education and outreach partnerships, they're very important and have been a focus in the RDU area, and they need to continue as such. The FAA, us air traffic controllers, we've conducted briefings, worked with the FAA safety team. Like I said, we've engaged with local pilots and flight schools to increase awareness of the traffic flows in the operational areas that we see these recurring scenarios. And that is part of this whole process for airspace change. We've tried to mitigate that with pilot outreach and some other various steps and tools. But while all these efforts, they're very valuable for everyone. But again, they're kind of advisory in nature and basically rely on voluntary participation. So, that does not require all aircraft operating near the busy arrival or departure corridors to be in two-way communication with air traffic control. So, essentially, education alone can't guarantee us a consistent participation or predictability in those areas. So the proposed Class Charlie modification that provides the more reliable and consistent solution by expanding the area where two-way communication is required with air traffic control. And again, that's going to improve the situational awareness and reducing the potential for conflicts. And, like Paul said, last minute intervention as well. So.
Thanks, Rob. And like Rob said, pilot outreach and education was part of what Raleigh tried and continues to do before going to this next step of expanding the Charlie airspace. So it is important and something that the Raleigh controllers have done, and this is really just the next step in creating a safer area around the airport. Paul, as a supervisor for the Raleigh Airport, will this new airspace change allow aircraft to fly closer together?
No, it will not. The airspace redesign does not change the separation standards that already exist between aircraft. However, the modification is going to improve safety by aligning the Class C airspace with where the aircraft are already operating, ensuring that the aircraft in those areas are, in fact, in two-way communication with ATC. This will increase the predictability, it'll enhance the pilot and controller situational awareness, and it reduces the potential for mid-air conflicts. We're not going to rewrite the separation standards. That's not what we're here to do. We're just simply expanding the airspace.
Thanks, Paul. Like you said, and we've said a couple times before, we're not changing the rules to operate in the Charlie airspace or around the Charlie airspace. We're just simply requesting to expand the Charlie airspace around Raleigh. Rob, how do you know that this new airspace will be safe?
Patrick, so any new procedure, any new airspace expansion implementation, all that has to undergo a rigorous safety review. And in developing the proposed airspace design, we considered other examples of this airspace classification around the NAS with similar traffic makeup, similar airport design, like parallel approaches for us. So we wouldn't propose an airspace change until we determine that it is 100% safe. Our the FAA's priority is always going to be safety first. Efficiency is second nature.
Thanks, Rob. And like we said before, once the airspace is finalized and in use, the FAA will go back and verify that everything is being contained as it should, and it's being best used. So it's in a constant review process, and again, safety is the number one goal of the FAA. So we'll make sure that once it's established, that it works well for everybody. I got another noise question here. If there are changes to noise contours that affect the NEPA subject lands, will this proposal again go out for public comments? And any changes to the noise contours will be based on the noise study results following the completion of the airspace design. That will determine if there's a change in the current noise footprint as a result of the new airspace design. If a change to the noise footprint were to occur, that change will be communicated to the public, at which time air traffic may make a design change to nullify any possible changes to current noise footprint. In short, yes, any change to noise contours will go out for additional comments. So we'll have an opportunity if the noise were to change over areas that are currently not receiving noise, if that were to change. But the routes and whatnot into the airport are not supposed to change. This is really just about containing the routes better. I got another question here. Can we register to receive notifications when the next public comment period? Yes, you can register to receive notifications for upcoming public comment periods for U.S. federal regulations and agency actions. The primary way to do this is to go through the Federal Registry and Regulations .gov. So you can go online and request to receive any notifications for upcoming public comment periods online. Rob, I know you talked about this briefly earlier, but can you kind of go over the proposed TTA RNAV GPS runway 21 changes with the waypoint Keenan, and how will that conflict or synchronize with the current fixed Chapel and the medevac rotary wing going IFR into the Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill Hospital?
So, if I understand the intent of this question here, so the proposed changes to the RNAV 21 at the Raleigh Executive Airport will help deconflict traffic into Raleigh Exec from traffic that is landing at RDU. Regarding the traffic into Chapel Hill Hospital or any traffic that's kind of operating in that vicinity out there, Air traffic controllers will still have to issue traffic advisories, provide service, and ensure separation so that we ensure a safe operation for aircraft conducting those approaches.
Thanks, Rob. Evan, haven't heard from you in a bit. What will the impact on student pilots be, and can it be expected to see a reduction in flight training?
There is no anticipated change to the number of type of flights at the surrounding airports. The airspace that the expanded airspace has been designed with flight training in mind and has been shaped to accommodate all types of flight operations that take place today. So student pilots, they'll have the same requirements to enter and operate within the airspace as all the other pilots and operators, but we did not design this to try and reduce flight training. We expect them to keep going and just talk to us and make sure everybody's safe.
Thanks, Evan. And while I've got you, would you anticipate an increase of traffic dropping below the shelves of the proposed Class C airspace while transitioning the Raleigh-Durham area?
Short answer is no. But pilots now, where they're going under the shells as it currently stands, if we were to change it and as it's proposed, they would just have to give us a call and establish two-way communications with air traffic prior to entering the new proposed Charlie airspace. So if they choose to not communicate with us, they would have to go around the new proposed airspace that we've got out there.
Thanks, Rob. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind adding one thing here, Patrick. So keep in mind, air traffic controllers here at Raleigh, we encourage participation by all pilots transitioning the Class Charlie area just due to the close proximity of all aircraft and the surrounding airports. And I, kind of understand the concerns probably with the question with, aircraft descending beneath the shelf causing noise and whatnot. So the FAA will review the comments submitted for the meeting and any subsequent comments through the proposed rulemaking process. And they'll take a look at the environmental effects for this as well.
Thanks, Rob. And like I said, they're not really wanting to, push aircraft down or make them fly farther. They just really want to talk to you guys. So, give them a call and, just let them know what you're doing, and they'll get you through the airspace to the best of their ability. Um, Rob, if a pilot is flying without ADSB and communicating with air traffic, does that guarantee that the pilot will remain outside the Class Charlie airspace and avoid a violation? And how does the proposed airspace change affect ADSB and transponder requirements?
So controllers, what we see, we don't necessarily see what aircraft equipment is on board as far as the ADSB goes. So operating in and above Class Charlie airspace, that requires specific equipment, and that being the transponder with your altitude reporting and ADSB out. We don't necessarily know that. So even if a pilot is communicating with us, that alone does not necessarily authorize the entry into Class Charlie airspace or provide the required equipment deviation for the Class Charlie airspace. So my recommendation would be, if a pilot is communicating with air traffic control and their aircraft is not equipped with ADSB out, just advise controllers. We're here to provide the service. We can assist with maybe vectoring the aircraft to remain outside of the Class Charlie airspace, remain clear of the top of the Class Charlie airspace as well if they were essentially overflying it. But ultimately, it's on the pilot's responsibility to ensure that their aircraft meets the operating equipment requirements before entering the Class Charlie airspace. Otherwise, they've got to go through and get the appropriate deviation ahead of time.
Thanks, Rob. And like we've said, this proposed change to the Charlie airspace, again, doesn't affect any of the rules and regulations that it requires to operate inside, outside, around the Charlie airspace, or any of the separation standards in the Charlie. We're just simply expanding where the Charlie airspace is around Raleigh. And, again, the controllers will do their best to help you out, if you let them know. So, again, communication is key. So give them a call, let them know what's up. Rob, while I've got you, will this proposed airspace modification increase radio communication requirements for pilots?
Patrick, short answer, only if the pilots are opting to participate or fly through the proposed Class Charlie expansion. And then that aspect they would have to establish and maintain two-way communication with air traffic control. But again, only through that, the expanded portion of the airspace would be the requirement.
Yeah, and again, it's not really an increase. I guess more than zero, but they just want to talk to you, so they have an idea of what's going on, or what your plans are, so they can better prepare for all the other traffic in the area as well. Evan, hadn't talked to you in a bit. What are the benefits as a controller to having a modified Class Charlie at Raleigh?
There are a lot of benefits, and as we talked about with the recurring events, as someone had asked about how long ago they happened, and I think Rob said it briefly. They happen every shift. Every time I come to work, I am moving pilots, and I'm sorry, moving aircraft out of the way of non-participating aircraft that are trying to get in and out of Raleigh. So the intent is to provide myself and my coworkers, the professionals that we are, with the awareness and predictability of all aircraft under my control, thereby enabling us to make logical and efficient decisions that benefit and provide the best services to all the pilots that are in the Raleigh area. It's going to lead to a more stable, predictable operation during critical phases of flight, which benefits both us as controllers and pilots for a safer and more efficient use of the airspace. It's going to help us out quite a bit.
Yes, thank you, Evan. Again, it's a recurring theme, but if they know what you're doing, then it'll be safer for everybody in the NAS, and so it'll make it more efficient, and just better overall. Rob, how much did the final airspace change from what was given to the ad hoc committee?
Patrick, we have a slide that we could probably bring up to better explain this. So on the left was the initial proposed Class Charlie airspace, and that's overlaying the current Class Charlie airspace. The proposed is in the lighter shade of pink, and on the right is the newly revised modification for the proposed Class Charlie. So if you take a look, you can kind of see the wings to the northeast and to the southwest of the airport. That area was what was modified, and that was part of the ad hoc committee's recommendations. We had to look at what their concerns with were through those areas. So the final design we have on the right, that is taking into consideration some of the ad hoc committee's concerns and also some of air traffic's concerns as well. So, overall, the final design reflects, significant input from the committee members themselves.
Thanks, Rob. And like I said, you can see the two different examples right there on the screen. And there's a lot more input that they gave us that we've tried to incorporate as much as possible. Got another noise question here. Can we see today's noise contours? Raleigh has old versions available, but not the current versions. And at this time, there's no publicly available schedule for Raleigh to update its Part 150 noise contours. Such updates are generally conducted when there's a substantial change in the airport operations or noise exposure, warranting evaluations under the 14 CFR Part 150. The FAA may develop a baseline noise footprint analysis to characterize existing noise conditions. However, Part 150 noise contours are typically prepared and maintained by the Raleigh-Durham Noise Office. So that's the best answer I've got for you. Uh, Evan, about what percentage of these air traffic conflicts could have been avoided with the new airspace layout?
If you wanted to throw some of them back up there to take a look at them, we can do that. But as the professional in me that works here, I want to tell you that it's 100%, but there is no actual answer about what percentage, excuse me, these conflicts could have been avoided. But I would like to think that we could avoid all of them with the new airspace. But the modifications that we are a result of analyzing these conflicts in these areas over a number of years. And we're expecting that the proposed changes will significantly reduce the instances of conflicts and enhance the safety of the operation. If you call me and tell me where you're going, I want you to go there as fast as you do, and I want you to get there safely. So we really just want to talk to you to make sure that these conflicts can be avoided and that everyone stays safe in and around Raleigh.
Thanks, Evan. And like you said, communication is key. So if he knows where you're going, they can get you there quicker, hopefully, and then keep you out of the way of any aircraft that are coming into or departing Raleigh. And so it'll literally help everybody get to where they want to be quicker and save time and money. Rob, why is the Class C getting bigger?
So, we've kind of touched on this a little bit already this evening. So, aircraft right now are currently arriving, departing RDU. Those aircraft are operating outside the current Class Charlie boundaries while they're being sequenced for landing or the initial climb after departure. So in these areas, aircraft are not currently required to communicate with air traffic control. So the proposed change simply aligns the controlled airspace with where aircraft are already operating. So as controllers, like Evan's saying, we can maintain situational awareness of the traffic that's in these corridors, and we can better provide a safe, predictable, and efficient operation for everybody.
Thanks, Rob. And like you said, it's really just more about containing, the present routes as they are, so that when they get close to the airport in those critical phases of flight, that the route is protected, and everybody knows what's happening. So we're just really aligning the airspace with how things already flow into and out of Raleigh. Just trying to add a little bit extra layer of protection out there. But Rob, does this mean that I can't fly through the area anymore?
Patrick, no. Short answer, no. Class Charlie airspace in itself is not meant to exclude operations. It's meant to, have that two-way radio communication so that controllers and pilots are basically operating on the same sheet of paper. We know what their intentions are, and we can better, have the operation run smoothly through those areas.
Thanks, Rob. Again, they just really want to talk to you. So, you'll still be able to fly. If you flew through the Charlie airspace before, you'll be able to fly through it. Still, they just, it'll be a little bit farther out, those Charlie airspace areas. But, if you give them a call, they'll do their best to get you in and out of the area like normal. Rob, I know that you were crucial in kind of helping develop this airspace. So why did you extend the airspace so far out along the final?
Patrick, so why don't let's bring up one of the slides that shows the airspace here again. It'll be a little easier to explain. And without trying to be too technical with this here. So, Raleigh routinely operates with the parallel runways. And in order to maintain safe separation between the aircraft landing on those runways, the arrivals must be established on the final approach course several miles from the airport, while they're basically descending from around 6,000 feet or so. So the portions of those approach paths currently extend outside of the Class Charlie airspace, and that means aircraft near the arrival corridors that today, like we're talking about, are not necessarily required to communicate with air traffic control. So by extending the Class Charlie airspace to the northeast, there further into the southwest, that's going to ensure that controllers have situational awareness of the aircraft operating in those areas, and that will provide a more predictable separation between VFR aircraft and the aircraft landing at Raleigh, and also to provide more stabilized approaches for the aircraft landing at Raleigh, especially during their last portion of the critical phase of flight for landing.
Yeah, and now with the parallel operations into and out of Raleigh, aircraft really need to be established a little bit further out on their flight paths, and so just needed an extension to better protect them while again they're in that critical phase of flight um, into the airport. Evan, why raise the ceiling in some areas?
This kind of goes along the same path as what Rob was talking about. We have departures typically assigned a climb altitude of around 6,000 feet. And today, aircraft can legally operate just above the Class Charlie boundary between roughly 4,500 feet and 6,000 feet without talking to air traffic control, while departures are climbing into that same altitude band. And raising the Class Charlie ceiling in those areas ensures aircraft operating near that altitude band are communicating with air traffic, improving predictability and the safety in the area.
Thanks, Rob. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I do actually. One thing, and that's a great point Evan made. Additionally, and we briefly touched on this in the presentation earlier. So there are next-gen arrival procedures that begin roughly a beam RDU airport at about 6,000 feet. And like Evan said, these same non-participating VFR overflights conflict with these arrivals. And that does cause a denial for the aircraft to conduct these procedures. And that can also occur last minute as well. And essentially that leads to an increased workload for both pilots and controllers. And that's just part of the safety aspect that we're trying to address here.
Thanks, guys. So it really sounds like, if someone that you're not talking to is out there flying between 4,500 and 6,000 feet close to the airport, it really could be an issue for, lots of people and cause, last minute deviations and whatnot. So raising the altitude to 6 will prevent a lot of those issues, hopefully. Evan, will this increase the delays for VFR aircraft?
I really don't think so. Communication requirements for this are going to be the same as the current Class Charlie. Most cases, VFRs that are transitioning through the airspace, they're going to call us at the approach control. We're going to give them a traffic advisory, and they're just going to continue on through the airspace. We don't anticipate that we're going to change how we route traffic around Raleigh. It's just more about predictability and safety for everybody that's involved. So I don't see this increasing any delays for VFR traffic.
Thanks, Evan. Again, they just want to talk to you. And I mean, who doesn't want to talk to Evan? And so, if you give them a call, uh, and they can work you through, a lot of times it'll actually be quicker for them to get you through the airspace and on your merry way, than, keeping you outside. Um, Rob, why not just give traffic advisories instead of expanding the airspace?
Yeah, that's a valid question. But controllers, we can only provide traffic advisories to aircraft that we're in communication with. So, when aircraft are operating outside of the Class Charlie airspace, they're operating outside of the required two-way radio communication, which essentially means we don't know what they're doing. We don't know what their intentions. We have no awareness. So the proposed airspace that ensures aircraft operating near these arrival and departure corridors are participating in the air traffic system. The short answer here, we can't manage traffic that we're not talking to, and we can't anticipate their intentions.
Yeah. So again, it's just communication piece. They'd like to talk to you, have an idea what you're doing, and then that way, they can make a plan in their head to, best get you to where you'd like to be, and then the traffic that's trying to get into and out of Raleigh, in the best, safest manner. Um, Rob, why didn't you just change the procedures instead of the airspace?
So I was part of the team back in 2020. We implemented significant procedural redesign that included new RNAV or GPS arrivals and departures in and out of Raleigh, including approach procedures as well. So while these changes, they improve the efficiency and predictability, they didn't eliminate the areas where aircraft are operating just outside of the Class Charlie airspace during the critical phases of flight. So this airspace modification is going to address that remaining gap that we see.
Thanks, Rob. And a lot of the procedures now are designed, as well for optimization into and out of the airports. So there's really only so much you can do with procedures. And then, like Rob said, the next step is, changing airspace, just to better contain the procedures, into and out of the field. Paul, it's been a moment, so I'm going to bring you back in here. But how do you feel about this question? How will the affected training aircraft? How will this affect training aircraft near Sanford?
Yeah, I think we covered this a little bit earlier, and aircraft operating from Sanford or other nearby airports, they can continue operating in the area. The only change is that aircraft entering the proposed Class Charlie segments will need to establish that two-way communication with us prior to entry and then remain in compliance with operating and equipage requirements. There's no operational exclusion here. We want to talk to you, and it's better for everybody.
Thanks, Paul. Again, like I said, and just repeated it again, they want to talk to you, and get you the best services for everybody. Um, Paul, was this change driven by a specific incident?
The proposal is based on recurring operational interactions. Like Evan said earlier, he's always vectoring aircraft away from non-participating or moving people around. So lots of recurring operational interactions over time, including events involving aircraft operating near arrival, the departure corridors, without communication with air traffic. The safety case includes representative examples illustrating how these situations occur and how the proposed airspace modification would mitigate them. So it's all trend-based safety improvement. And we saw some of those examples in the opening remarks there.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I mean, one of the boards that we just had up a moment ago, showed an example of, an aircraft that was outside the current Class Charlie, and how it caused issue for aircraft inbound to Raleigh. So again, it's not one incident that we use to try and change things. It's a trend over time that we really use to best develop these changes to airspace. Rob, as our resident pilot-ish person, I kind of got a very specific question here, but my company operates helicopters out of Raleigh and utilizes the helicopter letter of agreement routing. How will this proposal change this agreement?
You're right. That is a very specific question that only applies to a small number of operators in and out of Raleigh here. I will say that Raleigh Air Traffic intends to continue to utilize this agreement between these local operators. However, the routings that are to the east and the southeast of Raleigh will need to be modified to account for that expansion of the surface area that we shown earlier. So there are some things in the works already. We intend to collaborate with these local users on establishing some new routes and reporting points. So look for some more information here in the near future.
Thanks, Rob. And like you said, the for this very specific group of people, helicopter operators that are signatories to this LOA, once the design is finalized, you can expect, I guess, more communication from Raleigh about, any changes to, your present LOA and, what will have to happen with the new changes in the Class C surface area. But, they'll work with you and all the users of the airspace for, the safety of the NAS and trying to be efficient into and out of Raleigh. Paul, I got a kind of a specific question again, but how do I obtain a deviation for ADS-B out requirements in Class Charlie airspace?
Yeah, great question. To request a deviation from the ADS-B out requirement for operations inside a Class Charlie airspace, the pilots can use the FAA's ADS-B deviation authorization pre-flight tool, or ADAPT. And it's available online through the FAA safety assurance system. And there we go. We got it on, brought up a board there. And you can go to sapt.faa.gov. And through ADAPT, you can submit a request prior to your flight and provide details such as your aircraft information, your proposed route, your altitude, timing of the operation. And if it's approved, the authorization allows you to operate in ADS-B rule airspace, including Class Charlie, without compliant ADS-B out equipment for that specific flight. Now, it is important to note that requests should be submitted at least an hour before the proposed flight, and approval is not guaranteed. It's also subject to air traffic discretion and operational considerations. You must receive a confirmation or an authorization before entering the airspace. In this process, it helps to ensure continued safety and coordination within the controlled airspace while accommodating aircraft that are not ADS-B equipped.
Thanks, Paul. So yeah, if you have an aircraft and it's not ADS-B equipped with ADS-B out requirements, just go to that website again. It's http:// sapt.faa.gov. And there's a QR code there on the screen for you, and fill out that paperwork. And if approved, um, then you'll be able to transition the airspace without the ADSB out equipment. But again, like you stressed, get your confirmation authorization before entering the airspace. Again, I would let the controllers know. Like I said, communication is key. So just tell them what you know, and how they can help you, and they'll do their best to do that. Rob, could you explain in simple terms what expanded ATC interaction boundaries really mean?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. Why don't we bring up one of the slides again that has the airspace, the proposed airspace. So, in simple terms, the expanded ATC interaction boundaries, it refers to the FAA's decision to increase the size of the protected airspace around airports where pilots are required to communicate with air traffic control. So that light pink boundary to the northeast into the southwest, that is the expanded ATC interaction boundary, essentially, along with the vertical aspect of it.
Thanks, Rob. So just expanded around the Charlie airspace, where you will have to talk to air traffic if you want to transition through. Again, I just want to talk to you. Paul, if the flight paths aren't changing, what will feel different to pilots on a day-to-day basis?
With the current airspace modification proposal, flight paths are not going to change. The airspace is simply being expanded, and the Class Charlie procedures will be the same in the expanded airspace as it is currently. They will just have to talk to us a little bit sooner because it's being expanded laterally. Or if they want to descend into it, they're going to talk to us to descend into it. So they will talk to us a little bit more, a little bit sooner, but that's about it.
Yeah, so I mean, a day-to-day pilot that flies in and around Raleigh, you'll probably just hear more traffic being talked to or worked by the controllers in the Raleigh airspace. But like you said, the flight paths aren't going to change, so you'll still be flying the same routes and whatnot. You just might have to talk to the controllers a little bit sooner, and so you might hear a few more pilots than normal.
Patrick,
But
if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind, adding a little bit more onto this as well.
go ahead.
So, I would say as a benefit for this too, the earlier interaction with air traffic controllers, especially VFR pilots that are coming back into land at RDU, that earlier interaction allows us to pre-plan things a lot better to allow minimize the delays that were asked earlier in the Zoom here. So keep that in mind. The earlier you talk with air traffic control, the better off we'll be able to make a plan for the future.
Thanks, Rob. Paul, I got a question here. Is this current proposed alignment to ensure rules apply for handoff and complete two-way communication? When Rob states we do not talk, arrivals still talk to TRACON/center, or no, just trying to understand.
If I'm understanding the question, they will talk to us once they want to enter the Charlie and land at Raleigh-Durham or fly through the airspace. The proposed change is merely designed to ensure that non-participating aircraft are required to establish a two-way radio communication when flying in the areas that impact the arriving and departing aircraft during critical phases of flight. Like we talked about earlier, descending out of 6,000 feet for the airport. That the ceiling is now 6,000 feet. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, when it says when Rob states we do not talk, I believe they're not talking to us, but they will eventually, yes, in the TRACON. In the approach environment, they're going to talk to us we'll work them through or into Raleigh-Durham, and then we'll just hand them off to the tower.
Thanks, Paul. Again, it's really about communication and trying to make sure that they have an idea of where you're going. So, if if you normally don't talk to them outside of the current Charlie airspace, and then you want to fly in an area that will, if this design goes through, be protected by the expanded Charlie, um, then you'll just have to contact them earlier, and they'll get you through um, and establish that two-way communication. And if you're talking to, I guess, the center or someone else first, then they will provide the handoff to the approach um, control, and you'll have that two-way communication already established. Evan, does the new airspace allow for the next gen arrivals to approach procedures?
Yes. As Rob's been talking about questions that we've answered earlier, how this marries up the procedures that we changed in the past to line up and marry up with the airspace. This will allow us to probably use those procedures more often because, as we've been talking about, aircraft will be calling us sooner, and as Rob said, that allows us to make a better, more efficient, safer plan for the future. So yes.
Thank you. And like I said before, they're not really changing the routes that are already flown into and out of Raleigh. Um, they're just trying to encompass them better with protected airspace. Um, Evan, will this make it harder for VFR pilots to operate in the area?
The operations in proposed Class Charlie airspace will be the same as they are in the current one. So VFR pilots may have to either navigate around the expanded Class Charlie or otherwise comply and give us a call and establish two-way radio communications. We really want this to be easy for everyone. When we're talking to the VFR pilots, we might turn you 10 to the left or to the right, or ask you to climb 500 feet to get away from another aircraft that's in the area. We're not trying to take you 50 miles away from off course. We want you to get there as fast as you do. So it's all about communication.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, um, and you guys have said it plenty of times, but you just want to talk to them, and then additionally, just if you can get them on course and to wherever they're trying to get to as quick as possible, then that works out better for everybody. Evan, while I got you, is there any chance that this change could increase noise level in the surrounding neighborhoods?
So the traffic patterns there of arriving and departing aircraft are not changing. As we said, we're not changing anything about our procedures. And this should help ensure greater standardization of those arrival and departure paths. And as the question asked earlier about next gen arrival to approach procedures. And it doesn't change any of the existing noise abatement procedures as we talked about previously, because we're hoping that it actually gets more airplanes on those standardized procedures as we have them in place now. And there's an environmental impact review, as we said. It'll also be completed prior to the airspace change, and I'm hoping that it shows kind of what we've been talking about here.
Thanks, Evan. Like we just said, the routes aren't changing into and out of Raleigh, so those traffic patterns should all pretty much be the same. If anything, they'll be again more standard because you won't have to be vectoring off of them for aircraft that you're not talking to being in the way. So hopefully it'll make it better and potentially quieter for the area. Um, how are local communities being informed beyond this virtual meeting? And so I'll go ahead and answer that. Local communities are informed through the notice of proposed rulemaking process. And So any notice of any proposed rulemaking must be published in the Federal Register for a certain period to allow for public comment on the proposed change. So if you sign up online, like we had mentioned earlier, for updates, you'll get those. But the Federal Register will be published any proposed change, and then you can make any comments on that, for or against this, expansion of the Charlie airspace. Um, and while we're addressing that, it looks like you got another comment here, about what happens if the majority of the public comments oppose this proposal. Um, so whenever a majority of public comments oppose the proposed Class Charlie airspace change, the FAA is required to review, analyze, and address all the comments before taking any further action. While public opposition does not automatically stop the proposal, it often triggers a more rigorous review process, potential modifications to the design, or delays. So if most of the comments are against the proposal, then the FAA will go and again adjudicate all those all those comments, and see how to best address those comments, and then hopefully continue with some sort of modification to the Charlie, because we're proposing to modify the Charlie for safety. So it's not like we're just wanting to do this because we can. It's really about safety into and out of the airport. Rob, does the new airspace allow for a potential RNAV to affix as opposed to the vectored departure to affix, simplifying assignments for controllers and pilots when departing parallel runways?
So, if I understand this correctly, and I may give two responses here because I want to ensure that I answer the question and its intent. So, if we're talking about aircraft departing RDU on a RNAV departure off the ground to a fix, yes, in theory, this may allow those procedures to be designed in the future and allow participating aircraft, the departures to fly a more defined route off of Raleigh. The other portion of this question where I'm kind of leaning towards is the VFR aircraft that's trying to navigate around the Class Charlie airspace, that's choosing to participate in the air traffic system by receiving traffic advisories from us, instead of us vectoring them around a conflict. Is there a RNAV fix or different routing that they could fly versus being vectored? Yes. There are some fixes out there today that'll allow that to happen. And, that is something we can look at in the future as well to maybe add some more RNAV fixes and establish those around the airspace.
Thanks, Rob. So, there's several, it sounds like, potential improvements that, will be better for the pilots, especially the RNAV capable ones, to, be able to go direct to fixes as opposed to having to be vectored with the expanded Charlie airspace. I got a question here. When would these changes realistically go into effect if approved? And if approved, I'll go ahead and answer it. Changes to the Class Charlie airspace typically go into effect within 12 to 24 months of the initial proposal, aligning with the FAA's 56-day aeronautical charting cycle. Given that airspace proposals require lengthy public comment periods, environmental reviews, and rulemaking, a proposal announced in 26 likely would not go into effect until late 27 or more realistically 2028. So again, we're approximately halfway through this proposed expansion of the Charlie airspace. So given everything that might have to happen, we're looking at probably still another 12 to 24 months to get it done. But again, we'll work diligently and as quickly as possible so that, the controllers here at Raleigh, if approved, will have, better and safer airspace for everyone. Paul, if this change is primarily about efficiency, how are you ensuring communities aren't disproportionately absorbing the trade-offs for airline schedule optimization?
The change is primarily about safety. It's not about efficiency. Has nothing to do with airline schedules. Air traffic does not set the schedules that the airlines fly.
Thanks,
This is,
Paul.
yeah, this is just about simply expanding the airspace.
Yeah, and so like we discussed before, this change is for safety. It's not about efficiency. Um, you know, the routes aren't changing. The separation requirements in the Charlie is not changing. We're just trying to expand the Charlie around the airport so that Rob, Evan, and Paul can talk to these planes sooner, have an idea where they're going, and be able to get everybody safely to their destinations. Evan, if the routes aren't changing, can you quantify how track disposition and vectoring patterns might still shift in practice?
So again, as I said before, we normally will turn aircraft slightly in order to have them safely transition through the Class Charlie airspace, and we'll keep track of that. We have rigorous QA, quality assurance and quality control reviews, and we'll take a look at how it all works out in practice. But it won't be very much different from today, and it will not be different how we actually turn people. It's just now that you'll be talking to us, and we're going to give you a traffic advisory, hopefully, and just get you on your way.
Thanks. And actually, like Evan said earlier, that, realistically if the airspace design goes through as it is now, there'll probably be less deviations of aircraft into and out of Raleigh due to, them being able to know where the previously non-participating aircraft are going, since they'll be participating in the system and talking to you guys. Another question here about the timeline. When do you expect the proposed Class C airspace to be in effect, and what will the timeline look like from this meeting to a final decision? Again, like I just said, there's no specific time frame currently established for modifications to airspace. So any rulemaking process that follows and the subsequent implementation phases could take approximately 6 months to 2 years to complete. Again, we're about halfway through this proposed change for the expanded Charlie airspace. So, we'll have a 30-day comment period, again, that ends June 5th for after this informal airspace meeting. And then the next phase will be the NPRM phase. So once that gets published, there'll be a 60-day comment period. And then we'll have to go through the environmental process and whatnot. So there's a bunch more steps still. But again, we'll work efficiently and as quickly as possible to get this expanded Charlie airspace out to the public. I got one final question here, and I will let everybody have a stab at it. But how will the FAA incorporate current operations into the proposed Raleigh airspace structure once in place, and what indicators will be used to evaluate the overall effectiveness, success, and overall performance of the change? Rob, you want to start that out?
Yeah, I can give it a stab, and yeah, this is pretty in-depth question. So, like we've already talked about, the proposed airspace design, it's based on how aircraft are already operating today. So, incorporating current operations into the proposed airspace should be seamless. It was developed using analysis of all the existing flight paths, a lot of operational data, and input from a broad group of stakeholders to include the local users through the ad hoc committee. So the goal is to better align the airspace with existing operations, not necessarily to change where aircraft fly, but to ensure that aircraft are operating in those areas, that they're fully participating in the national airspace system. So I don't know if Evan, Paul, you guys want to add on to that? Feel free.
Yeah, to add on to that, after we implement this change, if we're able to get there, the FAA loves data. They're going to continue to monitor their operations. We're going to use established safety and performance indicators. The tangible benefits that we'll have from the change, they'll be measured through, like I said earlier, the quality control audits, comparing historical data to current data. And that's going to include things like TCAS RAs, reported safety events, operational metrics like unstable approaches and go-arounds within the Class Charlie. And we're really hoping and expecting that those events will be reduced, along with decreased traffic complexity in the new airspace and a safer overall experience in the Raleigh airspace.
Yeah, I'll add on to that too. Success is going to be reflected in the improved predictability, a reduced need for the last minute controller intervention, and just overall enhanced safety performance in the affected areas.
Thanks, guys. And like we've said, with any airspace modification, the FAA will continue to evaluate performance over time and make adjustments as needed to ensure that the airspace supports safe and efficient operations for everyone. So we will continue to evaluate, like I said, once it's done and out there. And I'd like to thank you guys for attending the Raleigh-Durham International Airport proposed Class Charlie airspace modification informal airspace meeting. The recording of this event will be available on the FAA's YouTube channel and at www.faa.gov/air_traffic/community_engagement/RDU. If your question was not answered today, please feel free to submit your question or comment during the open comment period to the email listed on the slide being shown. Remember, you must submit all comments no later than Friday, June 5th, 2026. All formal comments received during the comment period will be considered prior to any revision or issuance of a notice of proposed rulemaking for this airspace. The FAA appreciates your time and contributions to the proposed design of the Raleigh-Durham Class C airspace. This concludes our meeting. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for your participation.